to Talk of the X-Town, the channel where I will meet with Ipswich Town football team players and talk everything ITFC. I'm pleased to welcome my very first guest, playing 92 times for Ipswich after moving to Brighton in 2004, managed both by Joe Royle and Jim Magilton, known for his electric blonde hair, scoring and assisting on his debut against QPR, before moving on to play for teams such as Luton and Chesterfield. Currently the manager of Sheffield United under-23s. Please welcome Darren Currie.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, well, thank you for being my very first guest. We'll crack straight on with the questions. So, what was the pivotal reason for you joining Ipswich Town then?
Well, it was interesting. At the time, I'd started fairly well at Brighton, and I hadn't been there too long at the club, and I was very settled and enjoying my time there. And they'd started to discuss a new contract, and it was literally within 24 hours of them mentioning a new contract that I was aware that Ipswich had been on the phone and made an offer. And you know, I've stated in the past, Tom, that it was a bit of a whirlwind, and it you know, with everything that was going on at the time, it was certainly a whirlwind, and it come about very quickly. It was a no-brainer for me. Obviously, Ipswich were going well that season in the league, and I knew one or two players there, and I knew a little bit about the history of the club. And I think it wasn't long before I'd signed that we'd played there. I'd played there for Brighton at Portman Road,
yeah, and
the atmosphere was electric, obviously, because the boys were going well at the time, and I just thought this is kind of the opportunity that I've been believing in for many years. I'd hoped that it'd come a little bit sooner than when I was 29, but it didn't. And nevertheless, it still presented itself, and it was the opportunity that I was looking for to play at such a great club. So it was a no-brainer at the time.
Yeah, no, of course. And I think with you only being at Brighton for a few months and things like that, it must have been quite a difficult sort of situation to be in, you know, starting at a new club and then finding out that another club's interested in you not that long after joining. So that must have been a difficult situation.
Well, look, it possibly worked well for both clubs. I went there on a free transfer, and, you know, I'm forever grateful to Mark McGee and the club for giving me the opportunity. I'd always believed that I could play in the Championship. Obviously, not too many others wanted to take the gamble on me. Mark McGee did, gave me the opportunity, and I'd like to believe I proved a few doubters wrong. And then all of a sudden, you know, Ipswich comes along, and it was a very easy decision to make. But that doesn't take away anything from how I feel about my time at Brighton. It was short and sweet, but you know, 4, 5, maybe 6 months, whatever it was, of pure happiness playing for a great team and another great club.
Yeah, no, definitely. And sort of thinking about that then, you know, just talking to your memories and stuff with Brighton and things. What about when you're at Ipswich? What would you say your favourite memory of when you were playing at Town?
Well, I can't quite, if I could bottle up the feeling I had on my debut, when the final whistle went after QPR, with obviously my connections with QPR and with my uncle and that, and I'd only trained once with the club, and you know, it was just, I remember Joe naming the team, obviously being on the bench, and then getting me a chance to go on and score, and we win and whatever. You know, it was, if I could bottle up that feeling, I could sell a ton of them. You know what I mean? Because it was an incredible feeling, and it just got me off on the right foot. It was the perfect start to a really enjoyable time in my career at the best club that I played for.
Yeah, no, of course. And I think, you know, you mentioned about, you know, your family connections and things like that. And it must be, you know, with any sort of career in anything where there's family connections where the people have done extremely well, that must be always quite difficult. How much pressure did you put on yourself, you know, being a young footballer, having, you know, your dad and your uncle both being professionals themselves?
Listen, I've stated again before, Tom, it's for the first few years of my career, maybe until I got to Barnet, maybe let's say when I was about 22, I think I don't remember ever being called Darren. I was always nephew of. That's what whenever I read about myself, or it was always nephew of Tony. Which, listen, don't get me wrong, it's a he's family, and as much as he's my uncle, I'm a football person as well. So I certainly know how wonderful a player he was. So it was a pleasure having him on my side of the fence. But I started to make my own name and build my own reputation. Then I started to become Darren Currie instead of nephew of. But that's fine. I mean, Tony was a huge help to me as a kid with his advice and his little tips along the way. And the pressure, I'm not sure that I wouldn't say there was any pressure from having him as my uncle and having my dad that had played as well. It was just more the pressure I put on myself because I wanted to do the best I could with the ability that I had.
Yeah, no, of course. And I think, you've sort of mentioned some other people at Town as well, where you've had good opportunity when moving here. You had Joe Royal as manager. How was it being managed by him?
He's the best for me. He's the best. Listen, there's a natural bit of bias there because he signed me, but I think where the connection probably is with Joe being an ex-centre forward and, thriving off of crosses in his own career. I'd had conversations with him when I first signed, and he told me he was aware of me when I was a really young player and I first started out at Shrewsbury when he was, I went on loan to Shrewsbury from West Ham, but that was his first memory of me. I think he was at Man City at the time, and he had Peter Beagrie, and he said I had the similar sort of movements to Peter and that. So I was sort of on his radar, and he kept an eye on me. But playing for him, brilliant football man, brilliant in the change room, very witty, very sharp, just created the best atmosphere for you to play football in. And I was already buzzing at sort of driving into Portman Road and driving into the training ground every day, but he just created a real special atmosphere. And as I've learned over my career, and I'm obviously aware of now as a manager, that you create the right atmosphere and the right mood around the training ground, and obviously you add that to good players and good recruitment, and you give yourself a chance of being successful. And Joe was brilliant at that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think even from a fan's perspective, you always saw that. Even being a young fan myself at the time, seeing how he presented himself to the media, to fans and everything else, you could really tell that he was an extremely passionate man. And, one of the famous sort of quotes that he would always say, if they scored 4, we'll score 5, that sort of attitude of wanting to make sure.
No, and do you know what, Tom, right? And that is so true. That's what he was like. He just wanted to attack, wanted to get the ball forward, wanted to get balls in the box. And, that's music to my ears. But he had this wonderful way about him that every time you trained and every time you went on the pitch, you felt like you owed him a performance. And that stems from him being the person that he is. So, it was brilliant to play for. And obviously the saddest part of my first season is we didn't go the full way and, recognise the quality we had with staff and players and just finish the job off.
Yeah. Well, that sort of leads nicely into sort of my next question, really. Obviously there was the playoffs there, playing against West Ham. Must have been a great experience for one, but how do you sort of deal with that, with not getting through to the final and struggling to then progress, I guess, the following season?
Yeah, it was tough because I think from memory, West Ham had finished 12, 13 points behind us. And my experiences, both in management, coaching, as a player, when you climb into the playoffs and you take the momentum that way, you can kind of look at it, and them teams tend to have that little bit of momentum that can make them favourite. And obviously, we'd been from the moment I signed for Ipswich, we was fortunate enough to be sitting in the top 2 or 3 all season. and we kind of went down into it rather than climbing into it. But I got to be honest, as frustrating as that was, because obviously we should have finished the job off. There's no doubt about that. We were still confident going into the game, and then leaving Upton Park with a draw, and we knew we were strong at home at Portman Road, so we was confident. It just didn't happen on the day, but it's heartbreaking for me, because that was my problem. I know I got promoted with Derby, but it was a loan deal, and they didn't keep me on. But that, I look back on my career, and that was my one opportunity to get promoted to the top league.
Yeah. And
with a club like Ipswich, that would have just made my life, to be honest. Tom, I joke about it, but there is a part of me that hasn't still quite got over it, because that was my chance, and
yeah, we
never see it through. So sad for me, but listen, I won't let it cloud the sort of time I had at the club, because it's a fabulous club.
Yeah, no, of course. And I think, with it being against West Ham as well, two really fan-centric sort of teams that are, very electric, be it in the stands, and passionate, is quite a difficult one to sort of take, really, isn't it? But with sort of that sort of side of things, with that, were you aware of the chant that Ipswich had for you at the time, or how did you come to be aware of it?
The chant?
Yeah.
What, the slow winger one?
Yeah, indeed.
I could hear it. I thought it was brilliant. I love it. I think my brother still sings it to me now once in a while, and he's told my son, so my son's aware of it as well. So listen, I can't argue, can I? Not the quickest winger that's ever played.
Yeah, no, of course. It's one of those, like, I've played for my university and things like that in big football stadiums where obviously there's nowhere near as many fans and stuff there. But even then, you're so focused on what you're doing and everything else. It's difficult to know if really the players on the pitch are aware of what's going on in the stands or anything like that.
Yeah, but do you know what, Tom? You do get some players that are so super fixed on what's going on, and they get themselves in the zone. I used to like the entertainment side of football, and I like the interaction with the fans. And of course we're there, and it's our profession, and I'm serious about it. But you've also got to enjoy it as well along the way. You know what I mean? So I liked interacting with the fans and sort of having that bit of fun along the way. But I have played with some that are so serious, like you're wasting your time talking to them before the game because they're just in the zone, headphones on maybe, or they just don't want to talk to anyone. You know what I mean? But
yeah, I
always enjoyed the enjoyable side of football, which is, I'm going to go on the pitch in a minute. There's going to be thousands of fans there, and I can get on the ball and hopefully produce a bit of magic, make a goal, score a goal, and that's what excited me about football.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think that's the thing, isn't it? Like you said, that goes right down to grassroots, where you have some players that have got their concentration from getting to the ground or getting to the pitch and stuff, and from the get-go, you can't talk to them or anything like that. But that sort of side of things, is there any sort of notable players that you wouldn't necessarily want to get on the wrong side of when you're at Town at all, because of any particular reason?
Do you know what? I tend to refer to Jim a lot, Jim Magilton, with a lot of Ipswich talk, because he could be your best mate when things are going well. He'd be your worst mate when things ain't going well. He's the most horrible man on the pitch if you don't give him the ball. But when you learn about someone like Jim, it's because he just wants to win. He wants to play well, and you've got to see him for what it is. He's just a very, very passionate football man, and he would be in your face snarling 1 minute, and then he'd happily buy you a beer and talk football all day. So he was a brilliant personality to have around. But we had some great characters there at the time. Our skipper at the time, Big Jace DeVos. I'd never ever want to get on the wrong side of Bam Bam, because he looks like he could kill me, I think, if he wanted to. And then you got people like Kev Orlock, who absolutely launch into a tackle. I mean, he was a terrific player as well, unbelievable left foot, but would love smashing someone in training and that. So no, we just had a real mix of brilliant characters and very good players. But we were a tight group, and again, when I look at my career as a whole, wherever I've had some success or football's been at its best, you've had that nice blend of good characters, but people that are desperate to win and be successful, which can sometimes lead to a few arguments, few scuffles, and a few naughty tackles in training. But they're the change rooms you want to be in.
Yeah, no, of course, and that's that level of passion that you really need, isn't it? You know, to really progress and like you said, have that good blend of everything there. Talking of Magilton, how was it as like a squad with him going from being a player into a manager?
I think it was. I don't think it surprised anyone because he was a leader type figure anyway. He knew how he wanted football to be played, and he was very much a leader on and off the pitch. In all fairness, so it was no surprise that he got the opportunity. And listen, you just naturally adjust as a player when a new man takes over. It just so happened to be a former teammate, and he was now the boss. So you just have to fall in line and do as you're told, like you do with any manager.
Yeah, well, I guess like you said, he's already a great leader that was on the pitch anyway, and it probably suited him quite well to slot into that managerial sort of position anyway. But like the other thing that I've sort of noticed when you've been moving your hands around and things like that you've got sort of a similar love for tattoos.
Yeah, I did. Yeah. Not so much now, Tom, to be fair, but when I was younger, it was a bit of a thing, yeah, but not so much now. That my wife keeps telling me I'm too old for tattoos now, but it's too late. I've got a few too many, so that's it.
Yeah. Do you or any other footballers in particular have any funny or memorable ones that you're aware of?
I had a friend of mine who I played with at Chesterfield once, like at the latter end of my career, and it was either Donald or Daffy Duck on his bum, like, and the lads used to just tear him to pieces about it because, that used to be a bit of a theme. They've got a bit more trendy now, ain't they? And they're a bit more designer, if you like. But back in the day, it was just names and bloody cartoon characters and whatever, and he's got this big Donald Duck or whatever on his bum, so we used to give him a bit of grief, but they're quite trendy nowadays, can't they?
Yeah, no, definitely. I agree with that. Like, I'm quite sort of heavily tattooed myself and things like that.
No, they look good.
Yeah, it's an additional sort of passion within my art and everything else that I have. So
good.
So every club, I'd say, has got like an unsung sort of hero, like staff member, or be it from the bottom to the top. Be it at Ipswich Town, who would you say that was for you?
What, not just a player, just could be anyone. There's a few, to be fair. There was, like the assistant manager, and didn't get too much credit. I mean, Joe was the man and Joe was the boss, but we had Willie Donachie at the time, who was brilliant, a very different personality to Joe, but nevertheless brilliant on the training pitch, very deep thinker, could really help you sort of home in on some tactical information, and he was a brilliant guy as well. So there was him. The club is full of good people. And I go back, obviously not in the past year, but when I've been back since I left the club as a player, you get all the same faces around the reception and around the sort of parking areas and whatever. You see the same people, and the club's littered with good people, which is why what you find probably with Ipswich as much as any club, that when you go back there's always a ton of ex-players that are there watching games, and everyone, once you've represented the club, you've got that bond forever, which is why so many people go back. But Willie Donachie was a real good unsung hero behind the scenes, behind Joe and on the training pitch. But another one who I mean, he's obviously very familiar with all the fans and that, but he's a terrific guy, and I'm still in touch with him regular, and he's an ex-player and obvious legend. But Simon Milton, I mean, Milt's kind of was Mr. Ipswich for me. Like if you needed anything, or he was just there with all the answers, and he just represented the club fantastically well. And he's really passionate about the club, and he's a great guy as well. So, but can't speak highly enough of everyone at the club. And new fans, I've said it before, and I don't want it to sound a bit too cringy, but you're the most passionate bunch that I've played in front of, because you understand good football, you understand how you want the game to be played. So it was a nice fit for me with how I wanted to play and the stage I was at in my career. Just wish I was there a bit longer, that's all.
Yeah, no, of course. And I guess that's sort of leads nicely into the next part, really. You mentioned about ex-players being back at the club, be it through just purely watching the team and supporting that. It does seem to be a consistent thing throughout, my span of being an Ipswich fan. You see in the stands, you see him outside or whatever. And especially, like you said, with Simon Milton, you see a span of players from now spanning further back than your career at Town and before, all sort of surrounded with players, from 10, 15 years previously at the club and things, which is really nice to see, that sort of togetherness and family orientated way of looking at the club, really, which is always nice to see as a fan's perspective.
I think the club are very respectful to players that have represented the club. So we're always invited back for, various events and dinners and stuff like that. So they're very respectful towards players. And I think it becomes a nice two-way relationship then. If ever there's charity games or any functions or anything that, ex-players can help out with, they want to give back as well. So it's got a real nice family feeling about the club, which is why players from all eras, whenever there's a charity game to be had, there's people from bloody every era wanting to play, and they want to get back and see each other again. So it's, in that respect, the club's brilliant at looking after ex-players, and likewise for us ex-players, it's great going back. Yeah,
no, definitely. And I think you sort of touched on it earlier in saying about how you're still in contact with some of the players at the club when you were there. Any sort of key people that have helped you in your career afterwards that are at the club?
No, I mean, the teammates that I had at the time, with social media now, it doesn't have to be phone conversations anymore, does it? I mean, that's nice to have, but you can just drop someone a message on social media or keep in touch, over Instagrams and your Twitters and what have you. So, pretty much everyone that I played with, your Tommy Millers, Westlakes, Kev, all of them that, every once in a while it will pop up that it's someone's birthday, just fire over a message and they'll come back how I. So we all keep in touch because we had a great change room. We had really good set of players there. So, but in respect of help, not so much help. It's just more just staying in touch and just making sure that everyone's all right.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that sort of, leads quite nicely to my next question, really, because I think especially nowadays anyway, there's a big focus, on people's mental health. And it's something potentially not necessarily spoken about in like the football industry as much. Like, has that particularly changed since you've been a player moving into management?
I think just in society in general, it's become more sort of evident for everyone, isn't it? It's social media means that nothing's hidden anymore. So if there's a problem for anyone or anything, then it's out there straight away, isn't it? So it is important that, I mean, I found through being a manager that it's important. I feel like I was like this anyway, but I think it's more important nowadays to not just keep totally focused on him as the player, but you've got to check on them as the person as well. And every once in a while, just just drag a player or two in or whatever, sit them down and just go, everything all right? Anything I can do to help? Because yes, I want them to be the best player they can be, but it's important that they're happy as well, because it all ties together. If they're in a good place at home and family and everything, so they'll play better. They'll play better. That goes without saying. So just checking in on players, making sure everyone's okay, and giving them that sort of opportunity to understand that I'm a family man, I'm a dad as well, I'm an ex-player, so I haven't got all the answers, but if there's a way I can help you, then I'm here to help you, not just on the pitch, but off the pitch as well. So it's important, just, I would say to anyone listening, don't bottle anything up. There's always someone out there that will help you.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's not only within, the environment of the football pitch, but, male society in general is something that's always been potentially controversial in more recent times, to actually speak up and do something about it, rather than leaving it to be on the back.
Do you know what, Tom? Right, I've been in football since I left school at 15 until right up until August of last year, when I left and didn't accept the new contract at Barnet and stepped away. I then had 6 months at home. Now it happens to be 6 months without football in my life is hard anyway, but in lockdown as well, where I can't even go to training grounds or matches, and that was a real tough period. Now I consider myself quite mentally strong and comfortable with family life and anything, but that 6 months was the toughest I had, and I had to speak to people about it, friends and family and that, because all I know is football, and then I've got this 6 months where I haven't got football in my life day to day, and it was okay at the start, but the longer it went on, it was getting me down, and I needed to speak to people. So there's always something going on in someone's life that you're never quite aware of. So again, my advice is always just speak up. Someone will help you.
Yeah, definitely. Be it social media and stuff like that, you just see that highlight reel, don't you, of everything that's positive or whatever. But actually, there could be 99% of it is hidden away, and that 1% is the positive. So yeah, definitely.
You're only going to put happy moments on social media, aren't you? You're not going to put anything negative on there. But if you just went by Facebook and that, you'd think everyone was happy as Larry, wouldn't you? But the truth is that a lot of people got things going on that they need some help with. Yeah,
no, of course. No, I agree. I'd say probably got a couple more questions. Have you ever looked back to come back to the club in a coaching position now? You've got all your badges and everything?
It's an ambition of mine. There's no doubt about it. I'd love to be the manager one day. Or come back in a coaching capacity. There's, either or. It's a club that I'm obviously very fond of and proud to have represented as a player. And the next step for me would be a real honour to go back and manage the club one day. But we'll have to see if that opportunity presents itself. But I'll certainly put myself up for it if the job's available.
Yeah, no, of course. And probably the last question, I don't know if you're still following Town or things like that. It's been a difficult season so far in League One at the moment.
Yeah.
Do you think we can get into the playoffs, or?
Well, when you look at last night, you get frustrated by it, don't you? And
yeah.
And obviously I've had some. I don't know Paul Cook as a friend, but he's someone obviously in the football world that I'm familiar with, and I've met him a couple of times, and you could really see the frustration with him in his interview after the game. Listen, let's hope that they find a little bit of momentum going into the last few games and do enough to get in there. But what I would say is, if they don't, then Paul Cook's still the right man to be there. He's a very, very passionate guy about football. He's got history of success, and although it's a tough period for the club at the minute, I would be fully behind him getting it right next season if he gets backed and he can bring in the players that he wants. But let's hope they find a way of getting in there this year and getting the job done this term. But it's more likely, in all fairness, that it's going to be next season. So,
Yeah.
you know, I'll be in full support of the club, the team, and Cookie.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. I think it's one of those with, you know, with the new backing of the Americans owners and things like that. It's going to be a difficult one to see if the players at the club at the moment, where majority of them have got their contracts up at the end of the season, and Paul Cook's already released quite a few players already, but youngsters and things. You know, it's going to be an interesting one. But yeah, who knows?
Well, I think now the takeover's happened, and with Cookie being in there, there's better times ahead. Let's put it that way. I know it's been a difficult season for everyone, fans included, not being able to go to Portman Road like every fortnight. But let's hope whatever happens this season, we have a good summer in the transfer market. Fans are allowed back in, and they hit the ground running next season. And then it will be difficult to stop them, because like I say, it's a great club. Just hope they find a way back into the Championship and beyond.
Yeah, 100% back where they deserve to be. Excellent, cool. Well, thank you very much for being my first guest on Talk of the X-Town.
I appreciate that. Thank you for having me, Tom.
Excellent.